Alright guys, how's it going? Today I'm going to talk a little bit about some progressions, skills, and things to think about in relation to handstands, handstand push-ups, and possibly even handstand walking. And I'm going to kind of try to work backwards to try to put some of these things into context of why some of them are important. Alright, so just kind of start from the very beginning. If you think about just standing up on our feet, we as humans, our main form of locomotion is going to be our legs and our feet. So obviously our bodies and our mechanics are adapted to that, but a lot of the same principles in terms of body position and muscle activation and all that can be applied to handstands and handstand push-ups. So if I were to stand straight up and keep my body pretty rigid and tight, and I start to lean forward and I need to come back from that, I can always just dig my toes in. That'll bring me back to center, and if I lean back, I can dig my heels in, and that's going to bring me back to center. Okay, and this is probably one of the most basic things you can apply to a handstand. Right, and obviously we're pretty proficient at being on our feet, so I can get pretty freestyle with it and do some different things, balance on one leg or whatever the case. And if you're proficient enough on your hands, like a gymnast who's been doing it from a very young age, you can probably do some pretty crazy things too. But for us that are just trying to develop this skill and are pretty basic with it, you kind of have to be a little more strict with it and focus way more on body position, at least to start off before you get a little bit better and more advanced. Okay, so when you're thinking about your hands, it's kind of the same thing, right? When you're balancing on your hands, ideally, you're in a tight body position, what we call the hollow, right? Pretty much a straight body line, rigid, if you will, legs together, toes pointed, right? And your balance is primarily going to come from the pressure in your hands, just like your fingers or your toes, and the heel of your palm is the base of your foot, right? And you can try and balance by, moving your legs around and breaking at the hips or whatever, and it might work for you, but really all you're doing there is becoming really good at balancing. If you want to develop the skill and be able to stay on your hands in a stable position for a long time, it's going to be a lot more ideal if you create that good position and start to balance with that pressure in the palm of your hands. Alright, so again, you want to dig those fingers in, dig your palms in to try and balance yourself. But let's kind of take another step back and just start with headstands and handstands, right? When we do handstands on the wall, which I'm going to get to eventually, kind of develop some bad habits. We lean on the wall, we have a broken body position, we're in a banana shape, and when we come down into that headstand position at the bottom of the handstand push-up, for example, we tend to have our head directly between our hands. And unfortunately, that doesn't really transfer over to the skill of freestanding handstands, freestanding handstand push-ups, and even handstand walking. Okay, so to kind of go back, if you think about a headstand, anytime you're in a headstand, which means your two hands and your head on the ground, you want to be in a tripod position. Right? That's going to be the most stable position. Right? So the best way to do that is to start in a push-up position, hands directly under your shoulders, good hollow, and if you come straight down, right about where your nose is, right there, that's about where you want to put your head. Okay, when you're in a headstand position, you generally want to have a little bit more weight in your hands than on your head. So I'll go ahead and demonstrate that. Okay, so that's our tripod position. If I were to try and do a headstand with my head directly between my hands in a straight line, you might be able to balance, so you're going to have a lot less stability as if you were in a tripod position. Okay, so whenever you're in a tripod headstand, you want to have that triangle shape, head forward of your hands with a little more weight in your hands. When you press up, if you were to press up into a handstand push-up from a freestanding position, then you would get into a more straight body line. Obviously, your head would be between your shoulders, but then you can start to use that balance in your palms, or that pressure in your palms to balance. But with that said, we take that over to the wall. We have this great tool, a wall, to use as an assistance piece. But like I said before, we tend to develop some bad habits there. But if you really want this stuff on the wall to transfer over freestanding handstand skills, whether it's a free handstand or a walk or even a freestanding handstand push-up, you really want to make sure you're drilling the right positions on the wall, which means you're going to get into a tight body position, hollow, butt tight, abs tight, elbows locked, pushing up tall, legs together and toes pointed, allow you to get as tight as possible. Okay, so now we're on the wall, and I'm going to kind of illustrate, at least attempt to illustrate why some of those things I just talked about are important even when you're on the wall. Okay, and this is great, having a wall, because it provides that security, that safety to where you're not going to overshoot, especially if you don't have good pirouettes or forward rolls to be able to bail out of that, which we might talk about a little bit later, but for now let's just focus on this. Okay, so when I get into a position on the wall, whether I'm getting ready to do handstands or just handstand holds or just practice getting into a good position, you want to think about the same things, okay? Good hollow position, abs and butt tight, pushing up tall, legs together, toes pointed. Okay, so in terms of just a handstand or a handstand hold, right, you want to try to establish that good body position on the wall, right? If you can do that here, it's more likely to transfer over to freestanding handstands on the ground. And if you're broken on the wall, yeah, you might be able to be up here all the time, maybe knock out 20, 30 handstand push-ups, but it's probably not going to help you when you're trying to develop skills away from the wall. Okay, so we're going to show a good position on the wall, and then I'll show you some bad positions, some things you want to try to avoid if you want to transfer those skills over to the ground. Got a good hollow here, pushing up tall, legs together, toes pointed. Even if I were to stay tight and dig my fingers into the ground, my feet are going to want to come away from the wall and even start to balance in the handstand. And that's kind of what we're talking about. If I were loose and I start to dig my fingers in, nothing is probably really going to happen. You might start to pull away, but if you're loose, your feet are probably just going to keep leaning on the wall. So that's one thing to think about. If you kick up on the wall for a handstand or handstand push-ups, you don't want to just rely on the wall and just lean on it. You just want to use it as a little bit of support and try to keep your body in a nice tight position. Alright, so what you don't want to do is be in this broken position with your butt loose, hips leaning on the wall, right? Or just like start to come farther away, just get into this really overextended position. Okay? I want to get tight and not lean on the wall too much. Okay? Now, if we're talking about handstand push-ups, you got to think about that tripod that I mentioned before, right? A lot of times people do handstand push-ups and they just come straight down, head between the hands. Great. You might have to be strong. You might have strong traps, strong shoulders. You can knock those out all day, but again, it's not going to transfer over to a freestanding headstand, to a handstand push-up, or even to a handstand walk. Okay, so when we come down from a handstand push-up, you want to try to establish that same tripod position. Here, I'm going to come down, I'm going to get into a tripod, press back up. I don't want to come straight down, then press up. Right? Even though you can do that, not going to be a very good progression for freestanding handstand push-ups and handstands. Okay guys, so the last thing I wanted to do as part of this video blog is provide some good progressions for handstand push-ups, since it's a skill and kind of something that a lot of people want to develop. And the first thing I was going to tell people when it comes to developing handstand push-ups is think of strict handstand push-up strength first. Okay, kipping can obviously come later, but it always helps to develop that prerequisite strength for control, stability, and protection of your shoulders and your body in general. Okay, so whenever I do handstand push-up progressions, and strict ones, I'm always going to say try to move through the full range of motion. Okay, I'm not a big fan of putting stacking ab mats to cut down the range of motion. That's kind of like saying doing half squats to get better at a squat, or doing half push-ups to get better at a push-up. Okay, I always want you to move through the full range of motion. What you do instead is find ways to assist the movement while still moving through the full range of motion. So the first one I'm going to provide is going to be a down dog push-up or a downward facing dog push-up. So you're basically starting in a push-up position. You're going to raise your hips up into the air like the down dog yoga position, and from there you're going to, as much as you can, mimic the movement of the handstand push. Okay, so I'm going to start in a push-up position. Thinking of that same tripod, all right? I'm going to walk my hands back into that downward dog position, hips up in the air. Get my torso as vertical as possible, shift my weight forward. I'm going to come down into that tripod. Control, pressing straight up, as opposed to pressing in front of you. And that's our first progression. And if you do that downward dog position, the downward dog push-up correctly, in the right position, and you press overhead, you can actually make it very difficult. And it's almost as difficult as a handstand push-up if you're just starting out on the wall or whatever. But the next one we're going to provide is where you put your feet or your knees up on the box. If you don't have enough hip flexibility to kind of get into that down dog position, or you're super tight and you can't quite get your back as vertical as needed, we'll have you do it on the box. So I'm actually going to have Justin demonstrate for us here. But it's all kind of the same concepts as what we did on the floor. He's going to start with his feet on the box. He's going to walk his hands back to where he has that vertical torso. If you guys see that. And same idea, okay? He's going to come down into that tripod position, controlled, and then press overhead, finishing with the head through, if you will. Okay, not too much, but just right back where your head should be between your shoulders. All right, so one more, controlled, pressing overhead. Make sure it's a bad whip, pressing in front. What we don't want to do is this right here. Not to say that's not going to develop some strength, but we want to try and mimic that same handstand push-up motor pattern. All right, third progression is going to be using a barbell on a rack. I'm going to have Gus demonstrate this. And you can actually adjust the height of this rack and barbell according to your ability and strength level. Obviously, if you go a little bit higher, it's going to be more difficult. If you go lower to a certain point, it's going to be easier. But what this allows you to do is actually use your legs, get into a much more vertical position with your body as a whole, and basically do handstand push-ups with the assistance of your legs. All right, so Gus is going to go ahead and kick up. You might want to have a spotter, put a band around the barbell just to make sure it doesn't pop off the rack. And he's there. So he's actually going to hook his ankles, if you will, on the bar. Now he's going to start doing his handstand push-ups. Tripod again, pressing up, and actually using his legs to help him come up. We'll do a couple more. And again, good. Thanks, guys. He's just trying to stay as tight as possible, even though he's a little bit broken at the hips with his bent legs. He's still going to try and maintain that tight hollow as much as possible and not be too broken and loose. Sweet. All right, this is going to be the last progression I provide. There's a bunch more you can probably find online. These are just some ones that I like to provide to people. This one is a little bit unique. Maybe some other people know about it. You kind of need a particular setup. If you have a rig attached to a wall, it's a lot easier. Use the perpendicular pull-up bars. We kind of have it set up a little bit differently now. But what you're going to do is use a band. All right, you're going to hook it on the pull-up bar just like you would for pull-ups. And what you're going to do is basically create a harness with another band inside of this band. Okay? And even though both bands are going to be stretching for this exercise, the main one that's providing assistance is going to be this vertical band. This basically just allows you to put your arms and shoulders in to where it's a harness to help you come up, right? A little bit tricky with this here. Make sure you do this, have enough room to kick out, and it's not as dangerous as this is right here. But just go ahead and demonstrate. Put my arms through, head around, and from here, I'm going to kick up into my handstand push-up. There we go. Position nice and tight. Kicking down. Okay, so things to think about here. You want to make sure when you do this, you pick the right bands, okay? A lot of times people will do this and they're basically bouncing up and down on the band. That's not what you want, all right? You want this band to assist you, but not do the work for you, and you don't want to get out of control, okay? So, if this band was too much, or maybe too little, and you need a little more assistance, you can take maybe a blue band, or whatever the next band up is, switch it out with this one right here, maybe keep this one the same. Depending on the bands you have, maybe some are newer, a little more tension, maybe they're a little more worn out. You might have to play with it a little bit. But you want to find the right combination to where it's not too difficult and not too easy, and you're not bouncing up and down. And you can do maybe some strength sets, 5x5, 5x3, really whatever. Nice and controlled in the right position. Just make sure you're comfortable getting in and out of the band, kicking up, maybe hooking a toe around. You don't want to get tangled up in this and not be able to come out of it. And again, make sure you have enough room to where you're not going to hurt yourself. Okay, hopefully to wrap this up, I'm just going to talk about some quick things that you might want to work out outside of what we just talked about, but are also just as important when working on handstands, handstand push-ups, handstand walks. And the first is going to be getting in and out of a handstand. Okay, so when you kick up, whether it's on the wall or freestanding on the ground, you want to be controlled. Okay, a lot of people tend to dive bomb or just over kick into a handstand, but you want it to be controlled. Okay, what I like to tell people is take a light lunge forward, reach with locked arms, kicking your legs straight up and being tight from the get-go. Okay, you don't want to be loose and just use momentum to get up there. You want to kick your leg up. Okay, so practice kick-ups, just feel the balance. Maybe go just halfway up, come back down. Okay, and then try to find that quiet spot to where you can start to feel the balance. As far as getting out of the handstand, especially when you're practicing on freestanding, you want to be comfortable either forward rolling or maybe just stepping out of it, pirouette or whatever. Okay, so you can step out. If you overshoot it, you can kind of just rotate, step out. And in some cases, maybe you're working on the wall, you can roll out of it with a forward roll. Okay? Okay, so that forward roll becomes a little more important. If you're on the wall, for example, and you're maybe doing toes to the wall or belly to the wall, handstand progressions. Come here. Walk it in. And from here, say I'm going to practice feeling that balance, digging my fingers in, and I'm overshoot, I'm falling, I'm going to roll out. Okay? Because that's really the best way to come out of that. You can step out to the side, that's great. But if you have a little more momentum, you might have to roll. Now, the last one's going to be spotting, especially when it comes to freestanding handstand. We'll have Justin step in here. When he kicks up, my job as a spotter is to make sure he doesn't get hurt. Okay, so when he kicks up, I'm going to give him a hard spot, make sure he feels me. And once he kind of gets to that quiet spot, I can let him play with the balance, pressure in his palms, try to give him some cues. Okay, so here we go. What leg are you going to kick up with? He's going to kick up with his left, so I'm on his left side. He's going to go. Hard spot, boom. Get tight, legs together, toes pointed. And now I can let him play. All right? Not giving him too much support, making sure he's not going to fall and get hurt, hit something. It's all him right here. A little bit more. Nice. Go for it, bro. And what I mean by hard spot is basically when he kicks up, I'm going to stop him. Even if he has control, I'm going to make sure I put my hand there, give him some good pressure so I know that he knows I'm there, and he's not going to overshoot and have to bail out of that.